I choose myself, not because I'm selfish, not because I don't care about others, but because for too long I abandoned myself trying to please people who were never going to live my life for me. I woke up one day and realized something had to change. I realized that nobody feels my pain the way I feel it. Nobody carries my dreams the way I carry them. Nobody lies awake at night with my fears except me. And that's when it hit me. If I don't choose myself, nobody else will. For years, I waited. I waited for the right moment, the right support, the right encouragement. I waited for someone to tell me, you're good enough. I waited for permission to become who I was born to be. And while I was waiting, life kept moving. Opportunities passed, time passed. Potential stayed locked inside me. Then I mustered something painful but freeing. Success doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who decide. And today, I decided to choose myself. Choosing myself means I stop making excuses. It means I stop blaming my past, my environment, my parents, my failure. Yes, things happened to me. Yes, life was unfair. Yes, I was hurt, disappointed, and delayed. But I refuse to let what happened to me define what happens next. I take ownership. I take responsibility. Because the moment I own my life is the moment I gain the power to change it. I choose myself even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because growth doesn't feel good. Growth stretches you. Growth embarrasses you. Growth embarrasses you. Growth exposes what you don't know yet. But comfort has never produced greatness. Comfort keeps you average. Comfort keeps you dreaming instead of doing. And I didn't come this far to stay comfortable. I choose myself when nobody is clapping, when nobody sees the grind, when nobody believes in the vision. I choose myself in the dark, when it's just me, my doubts, and my discipline. These real champions are built in silence before they are celebrated in public. I don't need applause to keep going. Don't need validation to stay committed. I know what I'm called to do. I choose myself by protecting my energy. Everybody can't come with me. Everybody doesn't deserve access to my time, my focus, my spirit. Some people love you, but don't know how to support your growth. Some people are comfortable with the old you because the new you challenges them. And that's okay. I bless them, but I still move forward because where I'm going requires focus, not distraction. I choose myself when motivation runs out because motivation is emotional, but discipline is spiritual. Discipline shows up when feelings disappear. Discipline works when excuses are allowed. Discipline keeps pushing when quitting feels logical. And I don't wait to feel like it. I do it because it needs to be done. Every day, every rep, every sacrifice, I choose myself by turning pain into power. And I stopped asking why the struggle came and started asking how I can grow from it. My pain taught me resilience. My losses taught me wisdom. My failures taught me humility and hunger. What was meant to break me built me. What tried to stop me trained me. And now I walk differently because I survived what I thought would destroy me. I choose myself by betting on myself. Even when the odds are against me, even when the numbers don't make sense, even when the road looks impossible, I am my biggest investment. I believe in my work ethic. I believe in my growth. I believe that if I stay consistent, to stay humble and stay hungry, results will come. Not overnight, but right on time. I choose myself by refusing to quit. I may get tired, but I won't give up. I may slow down, but I won't stop. I may fall, but I will get back up stronger. Quitting is no longer part of my vocabulary. Retreat is not an option. This is my life, my calling, my responsibility, and I will see it through. So today I stand here with a final declaration. I choose myself when it's hard. I choose myself when it's lonely. I choose myself when fear whispers, you can't. I choose myself when doubt shows up uninvited, because choosing myself is choosing growth. Choosing myself is choosing discipline. Choosing myself is choosing destiny. And from this day forward, no more waiting, no more hiding, no more shrinking. I choose myself and I rise. I stopped waiting for permission the day I realized that nobody was coming to hand me the life I dreamed about. For a long time, I was standing still, not because I lacked talent, not because I lacked vision, but because I was waiting on approval. I was waiting for someone to say, and now you're ready. I was waiting for a green light that was never gonna come. And while I waited, time kept moving. Opportunities didn't wait. Life didn't pause. The clock didn't slow down just because I was afraid to step forward. That's when it hit me. Waiting for permission was costing me my future. I was waiting on people who didn't know my pain. I was waiting on people who didn't carry my dreams. I was waiting on people who weren't willing to sacrifice what I was willing to sacrifice. And yet I expected them to validate a vision they couldn't see. I expected them to understand a fire they didn't feel. I expected them to open doors they had no intention of walking through themselves. That was my mistake. Gave power to people who were never meant to lead my life. At some point, I had to look in the mirror and tell myself the truth. Nobody owes me belief. Nobody owes me support. Nobody owes me understanding. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards action. And action doesn't ask for permission. Action moves. Action decides. Action steps forward even when the voice shakes and the hands tremble. I realized that every great person I admired didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves first. Waiting for permission felt safe. It felt comfortable. As long as I was waiting, I had an excuse. I could say, I'm just not ready yet. I could say, once they approve, I'll start. I could say, I'll move when the timing is perfect. But the truth was painful. Waiting was just fear in a respectable outfit. It was fear pretending to be patient. It was fear pretending to be wisdom. And once I saw it for what it was, I couldn't unsee it. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes fear whispers. It tells you to wait a little longer. It tells you to gather one more opinion. It tells you to delay just one more year. And before you know it, years have passed and you're still in the same place. Still talking about what you're going to do instead of what you've done. I got tired of being full of plans, but empty of results. I got tired of explaining why I hadn't started instead of celebrating why I finished. I had to understand something critical. Permission is a trap. The moment you wait for permission, you place your destiny in someone else's hands. You let their comfort level decide your growth. You let their fear limit your future. You let their insecurity set the ceiling on your potential. And I refuse to live a life capped by somebody else's courage. I refuse to shrink because others were uncomfortable with my expansion. The day I stopped waiting for permission was the day I accepted responsibility. I stopped asking, do you think I can? And started asking, what will it cost me if I don't? I stopped asking, what if I fail? And started asking, what if I stay the same? Because staying the same was hurting more than the risk of failing ever could. Regret is heavier than fear. And I didn't want to carry that weight anymore, I learned that permission doesn't create confidence, action does. Confidence comes after you move, not before. You don't feel ready and then act. You act, and then you grow into readiness. Every step I took without permission made me strong. Every decision I made without validation sharpened my instincts. Every risk I took without approval taught me that I was capable of more than I imagined. People question me when I stopped waiting. They ask, who told you that you could do this? They ask, oh, why do you think you're ready? They ask, what makes you so sure? And my answer was simple. Nobody answer was simple. Nobody told me. I decided I didn't need certainty, I needed courage. I didn't need guarantees. I needed guts. Because certainty is a luxury for people who never leave their comfort zones. I realized that most people who ask you to wait are not trying to protect you. They're trying to protect themselves. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your boldness exposes their fear. Your movement forces them to confront the excuses they've been hiding behind. So they tell you to slow down. They tell you to be realistic. They tell you to wait your turn. But life doesn't give turns to those who hesitate. Life responds to those who move. Stopping waiting for permission didn't mean I stopped listening to wisdom. It meant I stopped surrendering my power. There's a difference between advice and approval. Advice can guide you, but approval can cage you. I learned to listen without becoming dependent. I learned to hear feedback without handing over the steering wheel of my life. At the end of the day, I'm the one who has to live with my decision, not them. I also had to accept that choosing myself would make some people uncomfortable. Not everyone celebrates your independence. Not everyone applauds when you stop asking. Some people only feel important when you need their permission. And when you stop needing it, they feel threatened. So I had to be okay with being misunderstood. I had to be okay with being talked about. Because being talked about was a small price to pay for becoming who I was meant to be. There were moments when I doubted myself. Moments when I wish someone would just say, you're doing the right thing. But instead of going backward, I leaned forward. I reminded myself that growth often feels lonely at first, that pioneers are alone before they are followed, that leaders are questioned before they are respected. And I decided I would rather be lonely and growing than surrounded and stuck. Every day I stopped waiting for permission. I reclaimed the peace of myself. I reclaimed my voice. I reclaimed my time. I reclaimed my belief. I stopped shrinking my dreams to fit into conversations that couldn't hold them. I stopped explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped negotiating with fear. I stopped asking for a seat at tables that were never built for my vision. I understood something powerful. Permission is already built into my existence. If I'm breathing, if I'm alive, if I have a vision burning inside me, that's permission enough. My ideas didn't come to me by accident. My hunger didn't show up randomly. My desire for more wasn't a mistake. It was a signal that was meant to move, not wait, to act, not ask, to rise, not hesitate. Stopping waiting for permission didn't make life easier, but it made it honest. I no longer lied to myself about why I wasn't moving. I no longer hid behind people's opinions. I faced my fear head on. And every time I moved despite fear lost a little more power over me. Courage became a habit. Boldness became normal. Action became my language. Now, when doubt shows up, I don't ask for permission to believe in myself. When opportunity knocks, I don't ask him I'm allowed to ask. When ideas come, I don't wait for consensus. I evaluate, I decide, and I move. Because momentum respects movement, not hesitation. And the life I want is on the other side of decisive action. I stopped waiting for permission, and in doing so, I chose myself. I chose growth over comfort. I chose action over approval. I chose courage over consensus. And that choice changed everything. I became my own rescue the moment I stopped looking around for someone to save me. For a long time, I believed help was coming. I believed that one day someone would notice my struggle, understand my pain, and step in at just the right moment to pull me out. I waited for opportunities to be handed to me. I waited for understanding to show up. I waited for life to suddenly become fair. And while I waited, nothing changed. That's when I realized something hard but freeing. Waiting to be rescued was keeping me stuck. I had to admit the truth to myself. Nobody feels the urgency of my dreams the way I do. Nobody carries the weight of my responsibilities the way I do. Nobody wakes up every morning with my fears, my hopes, my pressure. And because of that, nobody is coming with the same level of hunger to save me. Not because people don't care, but because this is my life. And if I don't take responsibility for it, no one else can. Becoming my own rescue meant I stopped blaming everything outside of me. I stopped blaming my past for my present. I stopped blaming my parents, my environment, my circumstances, and my mistakes. Yes, things happened to me that I didn't choose. Yes, I faced obstacles that weren't fair. Yes, life knocked me down in ways I wasn't prepared for. But I realized something powerful. What happened to me may not be my fault, but what I do next is my responsibility. For a long time, blaming felt easier than owning. Blame gave me relief. Blame gave me relief. Blame gave me excuses. Blame gave me a reason to stay the same. As long as someone else was responsible, I didn't have to change. I didn't have to grow. I didn't have to do the uncomfortable work. But blame also took my power away. Because if someone else caused the problem, then someone else caused the problem, then someone else had to fix it. And that left me powerless. The day I became my own rescue, I took my power back. I said, oh, no more waiting. No more complaining. No more hoping someone else will do what I'm unwilling to do. I looked at my life honestly and asked myself a tough question. What am I avoiding that I know I need to face? That question changed everything because deep down I already knew the answers. I just hadn't wanted to accept them. Rescuing myself didn't start with confidence. It started with honesty. I had to be honest about my habits, honest about my discipline, honest about my effort, honest about the ways I was sabotaging myself. I realized that sometimes the enemy wasn't outside. It was procrastination disguised as planning. It was fear disguised as caution. It was laziness disguised as exhaustion. And until I confronted those things, no rescue was coming. I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what am I going to do about it? That shift changed my mindset. Because of why me keeps you stuck in victimhood. But what now pushes you into leadership. Leaders don't wait to be rescued. Leaders assess the situation and take action, even when the situation isn't ideal. Becoming my own rescue meant showing up for myself, even when I didn't feel like it. Especially when I didn't feel like it. It meant waking up tired and still doing the work. It meant feeling discouraged and still taking the next step. It meant pushing forward without applause, without guarantees, without certainty. Because nobody was coming to drag me out of bed and make my dreams happen. That was on me. Becoming my own rescue meant showing up for myself even when I didn't feel like it. Especially when I didn't feel like it. It meant waking up tired and still doing the work. It meant feeling discouraged and still taking the next step. It meant pushing forward without applause, without guarantees, without certainty. Because nobody was coming to drag me out of bed and make my dreams happen. That was on me. I had to understand that motivation wouldn't always be there. Some days I felt strong. Some days I felt weak. Some days I felt inspired. Some days I felt empty. And if I waited to feel motivated to rescue myself, I would stay trapped forever. Discipline became my lifeline. Discipline became my rope. Discipline became to pull me out when emotions failed me. Rescuing myself also meant forgiving myself. I had to stop beating myself up for not knowing what I know now. I had to stop replaying my mistakes and punishing myself for past decisions. I realized that self-hate doesn't lead to self-growth. Grace does. Accountability doesn't mean shame. It means ownership. I hold myself responsible without destroying my confidence. I learned that nobody's coming to give me closure. Nobody is coming to apologize the way I need them to. Nobody is coming to undo the damage or rewrite the story. And waiting for that was keeping me emotionally stuck. Becoming my own rescue meant releasing people from expectations they were never going to meet. It meant closing doors myself instead of waiting for someone else to do it. There were moments when it felt overwhelming. Moments when I wished someone would just take the weight off my shoulders. Moments when I felt tired of being strong. But I reminded myself that strength is built, not given. And every time I carried myself through a hard moment, I became stronger than before. I didn't break. I adapted. I didn't collapse. I learned. I didn't quit. I evolved. I stopped saying, I can't do this alone, and started saying, I will learn how. That mindset changed everything. Because the truth is, nobody starts strong. Nobody starts knowing. Nobody starts ready. People become capable by stepping into responsibility before they feel prepared. I didn't need to know everything to start rescuing myself. I just needed to be willing. Becoming my own rescue meant making hard decisions, cutting off distraction, walking away from relationships that kept me weak, saying no to things that felt good but led nowhere, saying yes to things that scared me but helped me grow. I realized that sometimes rescue looks like discipline, not comfort. Sometimes it looks like structure, not sympathy. Sometimes it looks like pressure, not relief. I also had to stop romanticizing struggle. Romanticizing struggle. Struggle is not proof of progress. I couldn't just talk about how hard my life was. I had to do something about it. I had to turn pain into action, trauma into focus, disappointment into drive. Because pain without purpose just becomes suffering, but pain with direction becomes power. Every step I took to rescue myself built trust within me. I started believing in myself because I showed up for myself. I stopped doubting my ability to handle life because I was handling it. Confidence didn't come from affirmations. It came from evidence. Evidence that I could fall and get back up. Evidence that I could face hard truths and survive. Evidence that didn't need saving. I needed self-leadership. I became my own rescue when I realized that no one else could live my life for me. No one else could do my reps. No one else could make my sacrifices. No one else could walk my path. Support is helpful. Encouragement is powerful, but responsibility is personal. And once I accepted that, I stopped waiting and started moving. When life hits me, I don't look around for someone to blame. I don't wait for someone to fix it. I take a breath. assess the situation, and ask myself, what's my next move? Because rescuing myself isn't about being perfect. It's about being proactive. It's about refusing to stay down. It's about choosing action over excuses. Becoming my own rescue didn't make life easy, but it made me strong. It made me resilient. It made me dependable to myself. And that changed how I walk, how I think, how I decide. I no longer wait for someone to save me. I save myself every day through discipline, responsibility, and courage. And that decision transformed my life. I outgrew who I used to be the moment I accepted that the old version of me could not take me where I wanted to go. For a long time, I tried to carry old habits into a new future. I tried to hold on to familiar behaviors while chasing unfamiliar results. I wanted growth without discomfort, change without sacrifice, elevation without evolution. And every time I hit a wall, I realized the truth. The ceiling I was hitting was built by the person I refused to let go of. Outgrowing myself didn't start with excitement. It started with frustration. Frustration with repeating the same cycle. Frustration with making the same promises and breaking them. Frustration with knowing I was capable more, but staying stuck in what was easy. That frustration became my wake-up call. It told me that comfort was no longer comfortable. That staying the same hurt more than changing ever could. I had to face the hardest truth of all. I was loyal to versions of myself that no longer served me. I was loyal to habits that kept me safe but small. I was loyal to thinking patterns that explained my limitations instead of challenging them. I was loyal to environments that felt familiar even though they were holding me back. Letting go felt like betrayal, but staying was costing me my future. Outgrowing who I used to be meant accepting that growth requires loss. You don't level up without leaving something behind. You don't step into a new season without shedding an old skin. And that loss isn't always external. Sometimes the thing you have to release is your identity, the way you see yourself, the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. I had to stop introducing myself with my past. I had to stop defining myself by my mistakes, my failures, my trauma, and my limitations. Those things happened to me, but they were not me. And as long as I kept wearing them as labels, I would never outgrow them. Growth required me to rewrite my internal narrative, even when the evidence from my past tried to argue with me. Outgrowing myself meant doing things that felt unnatural at first. Discipline felt forced. Consistency felt boring. Accountability felt heavy. But I realized that everything new feels uncomfortable before it feels normal. The old me avoided structure because it felt restricted. The new me embraced structure because it created freedom. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from excuses. Freedom from inconsistency. I had to accept that the old me was built for survival, not success. That version of me learned how to get by, how to cope, how to endure. And I respect that version of me. It kept me alive. It protected me when I didn't have the tools I have now. But survival mode is not meant to be permanent. You don't build greatness in survival mode. You build in growth mode. Outgrowing myself also meant outgrowing certain relationships. Not because people were bad, but because we were no longer aligned. Conversations that once energized me now drain me. Jokes that once felt funny now felt limiting. Mindsets that once felt normal now felt heavy. And that was painful because familiarity creates comfort even when it creates stagnation. I had to learn that outgrowing people doesn't mean looking down on them. It means choosing not to stay small to keep others comfortable. It means honoring my path even when it creates distance. And that distance hurt, but regret would have hurt more. Staying loyal to a version of myself I was meant to outgrow would have been the real betrayal. The old me wanted quick results. The new me learned patience. The old me chased motivation. The new me built discipline. The old me waited for confidence. The new me moved through fear. The old me avoided failure. The new me used failure as feedback. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened rep by rep, choice by choice, moment by moment. Outgrowing myself meant taking responsibility for my growth. I stopped saying, that's just how I am. Because that sense is a cage. It locks you into behaviors that can be changed. I replaced it with, that's who I was. And that small shift opened the door to transformation. Because if I could become who I was, I could become who I needed to be. There were moments when I missed the old me, I miss the simplicity. I miss the comfort. I miss the freedom of not caring. Growth adds weight. It adds pressure. It adds responsibility. And sometimes I wanted to go back to being unaware. But once you see your potential, you can't unsee it. And pretending not to know would have been more painful than growing. Outgrowing myself meant holding myself to higher standards, even when no one else did. It meant raising the bar on my habits, my mindset, my effort and mindset, my effort and my integrity. It meant doing the right thing when shortcuts were available. It meant choosing long-term respect over short-term pleasure. And that required maturity. I had to stop waiting for external changes to validate my internal growth. Growth isn't loud at first. It's quiet. It shows up in how you respond instead of react, in how you plan instead of procrastinate, in how you commit instead of complain. Proof of growth wasn't in my words. It was in my behavior. Outgrowing who I used to be also meant forgiving that version of me, forgiving myself for not knowing better, forgiving myself for choices made out of fear, forgiving myself for staying too long in places I had outgrown. Self-forgiveness was essential because guilt tries to keep you tied to the past. And you can't move forward while dragging yesterday behind you. I learned that growth isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you really are. The old me was incomplete, not incapable. The new me wasn't better, just more aligned, more disciplined, more aware, more intentional. And every day I chose to act in alignment with who I was becoming, not who I used to be. Outgrowing myself meant accepting that progress is not linear. Some days I felt strong. Some days I felt weak. Some days I slipped back into old habits. But I didn't quit. I didn't judge myself. I recommitted. Because growth isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. The direction mattered more than the speed. The biggest lesson I learned was this. If you don't outgrow yourself, life will outgrow you. Opportunities will pass. Seasons will change. And if you stay the same, you'll feel left behind. I refuse to let that happen. I chose evolution over ego. I chose growth over nostalgia. I chose discomfort over regret. Outgrowing who I used to be wasn't easy, but it was necessary. That version of me did its job. It carried me this far, but it could not take me further. And with gratitude, courage, and discipline, I let it go and stepped into who I was meant to become. I protected my energy the day I realized that not everything that demands my attention deserves my participation. For a long time, I was exhausted, not because I was doing too much of the right things, but because I was giving myself to the wrong things. I was available to everyone, responsive to every call, involved in every conversation, and emotionally invested in situations that had nothing to do with my purpose. And at the end of the day, I was drained, unfocused, and frustrated, wondering why I had no energy left for my own dreams. I didn't understand at first that energy is currency. Where you spend it determines what grows in your life. I was spending my energy on drama, opinions, distractions, and people who had no intention of growing with me. I was leaking focus everywhere and expecting progress somewhere. That doesn't work. You cannot pour into everything and still have enough left to build something meaningful. Protecting my energy started with awareness. I had to become honest about what was draining me. Certain conversations left me heavy. Certain environments left me unfocused. Certain people left me doubting myself, and instead of addressing it, I kept showing up out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear of being misunderstood. I was loyal to access instead of alignment. I had to learn that access is earned, not automatic. Just because someone can reach you doesn't mean they should. Just because someone wants your time doesn't mean they deserve it. And just because you're capable of carrying something doesn't mean it's yours to carry. I was confusing kindness with availability. It was costing me my peace. Protecting my energy meant saying no without explaining myself. That was hard. I used to feel like I owed everyone a reason. I felt guilty for choosing rest, guilty for choosing focus, guilty for choosing myself. But I learned that every time I said yes to something misaligned, I was saying no to something that mattered. And I was tired of sacrificing my future to make others comfortable. I also had to accept that not everyone would understand my boundaries. Some people benefited from my lack of them. When I stopped answering immediately, when I stopped overextending, when I stopped showing up for everything, some people took it personally. But boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. They are protection. They are direction. Protecting my energy meant removing myself from spaces where negativity was normalized. I didn't need to be around constant complaining, gossip, and pessimism. Even when disguised as humor, that energy was shaping my mindset. You become what you consistently consume. And I couldn't afford to feed my mind things that weaken my vision. I learned that peace is productive. Silence is strategic. Rest is not laziness. It's recovery. I stopped glorifying burnout. I stopped confusing business with progress. Just because I was moving didn't mean I was advancing. Sometimes the most powerful move is pulling back, recalibrating, and refocusing. Protecting my energy also meant protecting my thoughts. I had to stop replaying conversations that didn't matter. Stop arguing with people who weren't listening. Stop trying to convince people who were committed to misunderstanding me. Mental energy is limited, and I was wasting it on imaginary battles instead of real progress. I realized that focus requires sacrifice. You cannot be deeply committed to your purpose and deeply involved in everything else. Something has to give, and I decided it would not be my future. I stopped multitasking my life away. I started being intentional about where my attention went. Because attention is the doorway through which energy flows. There were people I had to love from a distance that hurt. But proximity is power. Who you're close to influences how you think, how you speak, how you see yourself. And if staying close required me to shrink, dim, or doubt myself, then distance became an act of self-respect. Protecting my energy meant understanding that not every battle is worth fighting. Some arguments drain you more than they change anything. Some explanations cost you more than silence. I learned to let people be wrong about me. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Because clarity with myself mattered more than validation from others. I stopped oversharing my goals with people who couldn't hold them. Not everyone claps for your growth. Some people listen just to doubt, discourage, or delay you. I realized that discipline creates energy. Chaos drains it. When my life was unstructured, my mind was tired. When my habits were inconsistent, my emotions were unstable. Structure gave me clarity. Clarity gave me peace. Peace gave me power. And power allowed me to show up fully where it mattered most. Protecting my energy meant releasing the need to be liked by everyone. Approval seeking is exhausting. You bend, adjust, explain, and perform until you don't recognize yourself anymore. I chose authenticity over acceptance. And while to reduce my circle, it strengthened my core. I stopped engaging with things that didn't align with my values. Just because something is popular doesn't mean it's healthy. Just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean I should. Energy is shaped by intention. And I became intentional about what I allowed into my life. There were days when protecting my energy felt lonely, when saying no felt isolated, when choosing focus felt misunderstood. But I reminded myself that loneliness is temporary, regret is permanent. And the version of me I was becoming required solitude, discipline, and clarity. I learned that peace is not something you find, it's something you defend. Daily, actively, relentlessly. You don't drift into peace, you choose it. And sometimes choosing peace means disappointing people who are used to your chaos. Protecting my energy changed how I moved, how I spoke, how I decided. I became less reactive and more intentional, less available and more effective. Less scattered, more aligned. And that alignment multiplied my impact. Now I understand that my energy is my responsibility. No one else can protect it for me. And if I don't guard it, life will gladly spend it on things that don't matter. So I choose to protect my energy, not out of selfishness, but out of purpose. Because where I'm going requires clarity, strength, and focus. And I refuse to arrive there exhausted. I showed up even when I didn't feel motivated, and that decision changed the direction of my life. For a long time, I waited to feel inspired before I acted. I waited for the spark, the mood, the emotional push that made effort feel easy. And when that feeling wasn't there, I told myself I'd start tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into next week. Next week turned into someday. And someday never came. That's when I learned the hard truth. If you only show up when you feel motivated, you will never be consistent enough to win. Motivation is unpredictable. Some days it shows up loud and strong, and some days it disappears without warning. I realized I couldn't build a future on something so unstable. Feelings change, Emotions shift, energy rises and falls, but commitment has to remain. Commitment is what carries you when motivation leaves. And the moment I understood that, I stopped asking myself how I felt and started asking myself what needed to be done. Showing up when I didn't feel like it wasn't glamorous. It didn't look powerful. Some days I showed up tired. Some days I showed up discouraged. Some days I showed up angry, frustrated, and doubtful. But I showed up anyway. Because I realized that success doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. Progress happens when you're there, even if you're not at your best. Now, I had to break the habit of negotiating with myself. Every morning I used to ask, do I feel like doing this today? And depending on the answer, my effort would change. That question was sabotaging me. So I replaced it with a statement. No debate, no emotion attached, just identity. I stopped treating discipline like a decision and started treating it like a standard. Showing up taught me something powerful. Action creates energy. Waiting for energy kills it. The days I forced myself to start were the days I ended up feeling the strongest. The momentum didn't come before the work, it came from the work. I stopped expecting motivation to lead and allowed action to lead instead. There were days when everything in me wanted to quit, when the results weren't showing, when the effort felt invisible, when it seemed like nothing was changing. But I kept showing up. And over time, something shifted. Not immediately, not overnight, but gradually, consistency started to compound. Small efforts stacked up, tiny wins accumulated. What once felt pointless began to feel powerful. Showing up when I wasn't motivated built trust within myself. I started believing in myself because I kept my word to myself. Confidence didn't come from affirmations. It came from follow through. Every time I showed up despite my feeling, I proved to myself that I was dependable, that I wasn't controlled by my emotions, that I could be relied on. I also learned that motivation is often the result, not the requirement. We think motivated people are disciplined, but in reality, disciplined people become motivated because they see results. They feel progress. They build momentum. Waiting to feel motivated before you act is backwards. Action fuels belief. Belief fuels motivation. Motivation then fuels more action. But it all starts with showing up. There were days when showing up meant doing less than planned, and I had to learn that that was okay. Something is always better than nothing. A short workout is better than no workout. A rough draft is better than a blank page. A small step forward is better than standing still. Perfectionism used to keep me frozen. Showing up imperfectly set me free. I stopped romanticizing the grind and started respecting the routine. Winning doesn't come from intensity once in a while. It comes from consistency every day. The mundane work, the boring repetitions, the unseen effort. That's where growth lives. And once I accepted that, stopped chasing excitement and started building systems. Showing up when I didn't feel motivated also forced me to confront my excuses. I realized how often I used tiredness, stress, and busyness as reasons to stop. Life is always going to be full. There will always be something happening. And if I waited for life to slow down, I would be waiting forever. I had to learn how to move forward despite the noise. I learned to separate feelings from actions. Just because I felt unmotivated didn't mean I was incapable. Just because I felt discouraged didn't mean I was failing. Emotions are information, not instructions. They tell you how you feel, not what you should do. And once I stopped letting my emotions lead, my progress became steady. Showing up also meant showing up mentally, being present, focused, intentional. I stopped going through the motions. I stopped half committing. Even on low energy days, I gave what I had. Because effort is not measured by how much you do, but by how honestly you show up with what you have. There were times when nobody noticed my consistency. No praise, no recognition, no applause, but I kept going. Because I realized that if I needed external validation to stay consistent, I would always be dependent. I learned to respect myself enough to show up even when nobody was watching. Showing up when I wasn't motivated built discipline, and discipline built freedom. Freedom from emotional roller coasters, freedom from self-doubt, freedom from starting over again and again. Discipline created stability. Stability created confidence. Confidence created results. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That shift is powerful because once you believe you are consistent, you act consistent. Once you believe you are disciplined, you behave disciplined. Identity shapes behavior. There were setbacks, days I missed, moments I slipped, but I didn't quit. I didn't shame myself. I recommitted. Consistency isn't about never failing. It's about never stopping. Progress is built by returning, not by perfection. Over time, showing up became normal. What once felt forced became automatic. What once required effort became habit. And habits compound quietly. You don't notice them day to day, but you feel them over time. That's how transformation happens. Not in big emotional moments, but in small repeated action. I no longer wait to feel motivated. I move, and motivation follows. I don't ask how I feel. I ask who I want to become. And then I act accordingly. Showing up, especially on the hard days, became my advantage. Because the days you don't feel like showing up are the days that matter most. Anyone can work when it's easy. Anyone can push when they're excited. But champions are built on the days they didn't feel like it and showed up anyway. I turned pain into power the day I realized that suffering doesn't have to break you. It can build you. For a long time, I approached pain as an enemy, as something to avoid, something to escape. I ran from discomfort, hid from struggle, and tried to numb the moments that hurt. But life has a way of teaching you that pain is inevitable. Loss, disappointment, rejection, failure, they all show up. And the question isn't whether they will arrive. The question is how you respond when they do. For years, I let pain define me. I wore it like a badge of defeat. I replayed past failures over and over, allowing them to dictate how I saw myself. I thought that because something hurt, it meant I was broken. I thought that because someone betrayed me, I was powerless. I thought that because I had lost, I was defeated. And in that thinking, I handed my power to the very thing I feared, my pain. But one day I made a conscious decision. I said to myself, this pain will not be my prison. It will be my fuel. That decision changed everything. I stopped asking, why me? And started declaring, try me. I realized that pain only has power if you give it the authority to control you, then I refuse to give it authority anymore. I chose to convert every hurt into strength, every setback into momentum, every wound into wisdom. Turning pain into power required me to face it head on. I couldn't continue to run or avoid it. I had to sit with it, understand it, and learn from it. I asked myself, what is this pain teaching me? What lessons lie beneath the surface? And in those questions, I discovered clarity. I discovered growth. I discovered resilience I didn't know I possessed. I learned that every disappointment is a teacher. Every failure carries a lesson. Every rejection is an opportunity to redirect. When I stopped seeing pain as punishment and started seeing it as a guide, my entire perspective shifted. I stopped whining about unfair circumstances and started analyzing how to overcome them. I stopped complaining about struggles and started strategizing solutions. I stopped being a victim and became a student of life's lessons. Pain taught me about patience. I had to endure discomfort without instant gratification. I had to wait for growth while feeling the sting of delay. I had to continue moving even when results were invisible. And in that endurance, I discovered strength. I discovered persistence. I discovered the kind of resilience that cannot be shaken by temporary hardship. I also learned that pain builds empathy. Experiencing struggle gave me perspective. It allowed me to understand others' suffering and respond with compassion instead of judgment. Power is not only measured by strength or success. True power is measured by the capacity to lift others even after you've been knocked down yourself. My pain became a bridge to connect with others, not a wall to isolate myself. Turning pain into power required action. I couldn't just think about it, wish for it, or hope it would happen. I had to act. I had to channel frustration into work, anger into focus, disappointment into determination. Every time life knocked me down, I chose to stand taller than before. Every time circumstances tried to stop me, I chose to move faster than before. Every time the world whispered, you can't, I roared, or watch me. I realized that suffering often reveals who you really are. Comfort hides your character. Ease masks your strength. But struggle exposes it. And I stopped running from those moments of exposure. I embraced them. I stepped into the discomfort and let it mold me. I let adversity teach me how to fight, how to endure, and how to thrive. I let my struggles become the blueprint for my success. Turning pain into power also meant reframing failure. Failure is not a dead end, it's feedback. Every time I fell, I examined why. I asked myself what I could do differently. I used the lessons from my setbacks as stepping stones to improvement. I stopped fearing failure and started respecting it. Because failure, handled correctly, is one of life's most powerful teachers. I had to confront fear as part of this process. Pain often comes with fear, the fear that will never end, the fear that you will never recover, the fear that the world is against you. And I realized that fear is a liar. Fear tries to convince you that struggle is permanent, but struggle is temporary. Pain is transient, but power is permanent if you learn from it. I decided that fear would not dictate my choices. It will only signal areas where growth was possible. Turning pain into power required patience with myself. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Growth doesn't happen instantly. Transformation is a process. And I had to allow myself to evolve at my own pace, without judgment, without rush, without expectation that the world would understand my timing. I learned to honor the journey and respect the process, even when it was painful. I also learned to find meaning in suffering. Pain without purpose is simply suffering. Pain with purpose is power. I asked myself, how can this hurt serve me? How can this struggle prepare me for what's next? When I reframed my perspective, every trial became an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. What once felt like defeat became preparation for victory. Turning pain into power required persistence. There were days I wanted to quit. There were moments I felt defeated. I discovered that resilience is built through repeated exposure to pain. The more I endured, the more capable I became. The more I faced adversity, the more I learned to navigate it. The more I overcame obstacles, the more confident I became in my ability to handle whatever life threw at me. Pain was no longer my enemy. It was my training ground. I also realized that power is contagious. When I turned my pain into strength, others noticed. They were inspired. They were motivated. They were encouraged to face their own struggles. And that realization added another layer of purpose to my suffering. I wasn't just surviving. I was transforming my experiences into impact. Turning pain into power required faith. Faith in myself. Faith in my journey. Faith that what I endured had a purpose beyond what I could see at the moment. Faith that even when life felt unfair, I had the strength to rise above it. Faith that my future could be brighter than my past. And that faith became the fuel that propelled me forward. I had to stop viewing setbacks as permanent. Pain is temporary, but power lasts. Every difficulty I faced became a lesson in endurance, focus, and courage. Every obstacle became an opportunity to develop skills, mental toughness, and character. And I realized that the only thing that could truly stop me was surrender, and I refused to surrender. Turning pain into power taught me to embrace discomfort. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Transformation requires facing fear, enduring struggle, and pushing past limits. Pain became a signal that I was stepping into something greater than myself. The moments that hurt the most were the moments that mattered the most. The most celebrate resilience. Every time I chose to rise despite pain, I strengthened my spirit. Every time I took action despite fear, I grew my confidence. Every time I persevered despite discouragement, I built my legacy. Power is built in the moments you refuse to break. And I refuse to break. Now, I see pain differently. I no longer fear it. I no longer avoid it. I no longer allow it to dictate my future. Pain is the proving ground, the training ground, the preparation ground. It is the soil in which my strength grows. And every day I choose to convert the hurt, the disappointment, and the struggle into energy, courage, and momentum. I turn pain into power. And in doing so, I transform my life. I stopped being a victim and became a victor. I stopped seeing struggle as punishment and started seeing it as preparation. I stopped hiding from hardship and started using it as fuel. And that choice, repeated every day, became the foundation of my resilience, my strength, and my success. I embraced responsibility the day I realized that nobody else is coming to fix my life and that the power to change my circumstances rests entirely in my hands. For years, I blamed others for my situation. I blamed the system, my upbringing, my environment, the people around me. I thought if someone just intervened, if someone just noticed, if someone just cared enough, my life would turn around. And for a while, thinking gave me comfort. It allowed me to postpone action. It allowed me to stay in a place of waiting, of hoping, of relying on someone else to do what only I could do. But waiting is a trap, and hope without action is a mirage. I had to confront a hard truth. Responsibility is personal. No one else is accountable for my dreams, my discipline, my growth, or my results. My life is mine alone. And the sooner I accepted that, the sooner I could step into true power. Responsibility is not a punishment, it's an opportunity. It's the lever that allows you to move your life in the direction you want. When I realized that, everything changed. Embracing responsibility started with small decisions. I stopped blaming traffic when I was late. I stopped blaming the economy when my finances were tight. I stopped blaming others when relationships fail. I began asking myself, what can I do differently? What can I control? What is my role in this situation? That shift in thinking empowered me. Suddenly, instead of feeling helpless, I felt capable. Responsibility requires honesty. You cannot take responsibility if you are lying to yourself about your effort, your choices, or your limitations. I had to face the reality of where I was falling short, the moments I made excuses, the ways I sabotaged my own progress. Owning those truths was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. Because until I acknowledged my role in my life's outcomes, I could not influence the results I wanted. I realized that excuses are the enemy of responsibility. Excuses give temporary relief for long-term stagnation. Every time I blamed someone else, I surrendered my power. Every time I justified a failure with "it's not my fault," I reinforced my helplessness. Responsibility is about stopping the excuses, looking in the mirror, and asking, what am I going to do about this? It's about transforming complaints into commitments, problems into projects, and setbacks into solutions. Taking responsibility also means discipline. You cannot take control of your life without creating habits that support your goals. I had to develop routines, enforce boundaries, and hold myself accountable even when it was uncomfortable. Responsibility is easy when things are going well, but it is tested in times of difficulty. I learned that my character is revealed in how I respond when life doesn't go according to plan. I had to stop waiting for motivation, support, or the perfect circumstances to start taking responsibility. Life isn't perfect. People will let you down. Opportunities won't always align with your schedule. And if I waited for everything to be ideal, I would never act. Responsibility demanded that I move forward despite uncertainty, despite fear, despite doubt. Tried to attack even when I didn't feel ready, even when the path wasn't clear. Owning responsibility also required humility. I had to admit that I didn't know everything and I would make mistakes along the way. But mistakes are part of the process. They are lessons disguised as failure. Responsibility doesn't mean perfection. It means ownership. When I took responsibility for my errors, I learned from them, corrected course, and grew stronger. Avoiding accountability only prolonged my struggle and limited my potential. I also learned that responsibility expands freedom. When I stopped blaming others and started owning my choices, I gained control over my life. Instead of feeling like a passenger in my own story, I became the driver. I could choose my actions, my responses, my focus, and my priorities. Responsibility gave me leverage. It gave me the ability to influence outcomes instead of waiting for chance or circumstance. Taking responsibility is not easy. It can be lonely. It requires rejecting victimhood and embracing the weight of your own decisions. It means making hard choices when no one else will. It means doing the work that nobody sees, that nobody cheers for, and that nobody appreciates. But it is in these moments, the quiet, unseen moments of accountability, that true power is built. I had to learn to stop delegating my emotions to others. I stopped depending on approval, praise, or recognition to validate my worth. I stopped letting others' opinions dictate my actions. Responsibility meant recognizing that my success, my happiness, and my fulfillment were my job alone. Nobody else could carry me through my challenges. And that realization was both daunting and liberating. Embracing responsibility also taught me to set boundaries. I learned to protect my time, energy, and focus. Part of being responsible is being selective about where you invest yourself. Not every opportunity, not every relationship, not every request deserves your attention. Responsibility is about prioritizing what matters and letting go of what doesn't. It's about understanding that protecting yourself is not selfish. It's necessary for growth and sustainability. I realized that excuses are not just lies we tell others. They are lies we tell ourselves. I had to confront the stories I was telling myself about why I couldn't succeed, why I didn't have enough, why life was unfair. Every excuse I abandoned opened space for action. Every reason I rejected gave me power. Responsibility is the antidote to excuse. It is the choice to act, regardless of circumstance, emotion, or limitation. Taking responsibility also required courage. Easier to blame, to avoid, to wait. It's harder to face the truth, to admit mistakes, to carry your own weight. But courage is the foundation of empowerment. Every time I stepped up, every time I owned my role, every time I refused to shirk my duties, I strengthened my resilience. I became unstoppable because I no longer waited for someone else to intervene. Responsibility taught me that my life is a reflection of my choices. Every outcome, every opportunity, every challenge is influenced by the decisions I make. Instead of being a victim of circumstance, I became an architect of my destiny. And with that power came freedom, the freedom to pursue my goals with intention, the freedom to shape my environment, the freedom to design my life according to my vision, rather than reacting to forces outside myself. I also learned that responsibility is contagious. When I embraced it, others noticed. When I led by example, I inspired accountability in those around me. Taking responsibility creates influence. It fosters respect. It builds trust. People follow those who lead themselves well before they follow those who lead others. And my journey of ownership strengthened not only me, but my relationships and communities. There were moments when taking responsibility felt overwhelming, when the weight of my own choices pressed down, when the consequences of inaction or poor decisions became visible. But I realized that responsibility is not a burden. It's a tool. It is the labor that allows you to lift your life, to redirect energy, to pivot, to course correct, and to grow stronger. I stopped blaming past mistakes for my current limitations. My past is not a life sentence. It is a teacher. Responsibility allowed me to reinterpret failures as lessons. It enabled me to convert regret into strategy, disappointment into fuel, and challenges into opportunities. Every moment I own in my role, in my circumstance, I reclaimed a piece of my power. Embracing responsibility required long-term thinking. It wasn't about short-term gratification or temporary comfort. It was about understanding that the consistent choices I make today will shape my life tomorrow. Every action, every decision, every effort, small or large, matters. Responsibility is the commitment to invest in the long game, to plant seeds today for a harvest I will reap in the future. Responsibility transformed my mindset. I stopped asking, well, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what can I do to change it? That simple shift in questioning rewired my approach to life. Instead of feeling helpless, I felt capable. Instead of waiting, I acted. Instead of blaming, I sighed. Responsibility turned my focus inward where it belongs and gave me the clarity and power to act with purpose. Taking responsibility also demanded resilience. I faced setbacks, failures, and disappointments, but instead of using them as excuses, I used them as fuel. Every challenge became a chance to learn, grow, and prove to myself that I was capable. Responsibility isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about navigating it with ownership and resolve. Through responsibility, I discovered self-respect. I realized that by holding myself accountable, I honored my potential. I stopped waiting for permission, validation, or encouragement. I realized that my life is my responsibility, and owning that truth is the foundation of dignity Responsibility means respecting yourself enough to do what needs to be done, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one else will. Now I understand that responsibility is freedom. It is power. It is growth. It is influence. By embracing it, I stepped into control of my life. I stopped blaming, stopped waiting, stopped hoping. I started doing. And in that doing, I became unstoppable. I became capable. I became the person who could overcome, achieve, and thrive regardless of circumstance. Responsibility transformed me from a passenger in my life to the driver of my destiny. I no longer wait for someone else to rescue me, to fix my problems, or to hand me opportunity. I take ownership. I take action. I carry my dreams, my failures, my successes, and my challenges with intention. And that is the true essence of power. Owning your life, choosing your path, and accepting that every outcome is a reflection of the responsibility you take. I embrace responsibility fully, and in doing so, I unlock my potential. I learned that the only thing holding me back was me. The only way forward was through ownership. And that realization, that conscious choice, became the catalyst for every breakthrough, every victory, and every step toward the life I was meant to lead. Responsibility is not a burden, it is a gift. It gives you control, influence, and the ability to shape your destiny. Every decision, every effort, every moment you own compounds into a life of purpose, power, and impact. I chose to embrace it, and in doing so, unshakable, and unbreakable. Responsibility taught me that greatness is not given. It is claimed. It is earned through action, persistence, and accountability. When you own your life completely, when you refuse to blame, when you refuse to wait, when you refuse to surrender your power, you become the architect of your future. And that choice, the choice to embrace responsibility, is the difference between living small and living extraordinary. I realized that responsibility is the ultimate form of freedom from blame. Freedom from blame. Freedom from excuses. Freedom from dependence. Freedom to pursue dreams, to create impact, and to live intentionally. Every day I take responsibility, I reclaim my power. Every challenge I face, I meet it head on. Every opportunity I encounter, I seize it. Responsibility transformed my life from reactive to proactive, from passive to powerful, and from ordinary to extraordinary. By fully embracing responsibility, I became the person I was meant to be. The one who shows up, takes charge, acts with purpose, and never waits for someone else to rescue them. Responsibility is the foundation of self-mastery, and self-mastery is the gateway to living a life of freedom, impact, and fulfillment. I committed to my vision the day I realized that clarity of purpose is the difference between living a life of reaction and a life of creation. For far too long, I drifted. I let life dictate my actions. I followed the urgencies of the moment, the opinions of others, and the distractions that surrounded me. I was busy, but I was not productive. I was active, but I was not aligned. And I began to notice a pattern. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I spent moving, I was not moving in the direction of my dreams. That's when I understood that without a clear vision, effort becomes wasted energy. Without clarity, action is scattered. Without commitment to a vision, life becomes a series of reactions rather than deliberate steps towards something greater. Committing to my vision required me to define it clearly. To define it clearly, I had to be specific about what I wanted, why I wanted it, and how it aligned with my values. A vague desire will never carry you far. Dreams must be concrete to be actionable. I began to articulate my goals with precision. I wrote them down. I visualized them. I spoke them into existence. The process of defining my vision created a roadmap. Suddenly, every decision, every action, every choice had context. I was no longer moving randomly. I was moving strategically. Commitment demanded focus. Once I knew what I wanted, I had to protect it fiercely. That meant saying no to distraction, no to opportunities that didn't align, no to people who drained my energy, and no to habits that were inconsistent with my growth. Clarity without focus is useless. You can know where you want to go, but if you scatter your energy, you will never arrive. I learned to ruthlessly guard my attention, because attention is the currency of success. Where you place it determines what grows in your life. I also had to embrace discipline. Vision without discipline is like a car without fuel. It may look ready, but it won't move. I established routines, habits, and structures that supported my goals. I committed to showing up every day, even when motivation was absent, even when challenges emerged, even when life demanded more than I felt capable of giving. The act of daily commitment strengthened my resolve. It proved to me that vision is not only a destination, it is a lifestyle. Committing to my vision meant enduring discomfort. Every meaningful goal requires sacrifice. Every transformation demands struggle. I had to push beyond the easy, the familiar, the comfortable. I had to step into situations that felt uncertain, intimidating, and sometimes overwhelming. And I realized that growth is always on the other side of discomfort. If I wanted to live a life of purpose, I could no longer allow comfort to dictate my actions. I faced doubt constantly, both internal and external. My mind questioned my capacity. Others questioned my sanity. The world often discourages visionary because clarity of purpose challenges the status quo. Committing to my vision required me to cultivate resilience, to stand firm in the face of skepticism, to hold on to my goals when the path forward was unclear. Doubt became a signal, not a stop sign. Every time fear whispered that I couldn't, I reminded myself that commitment was stronger than uncertainty. Commitment also meant patience. Visions rarely realized overnight. It is built through consistent effort over time. I had to resist the temptation of immediate results. I had to trust the process, trust my preparation, and trust my ability to grow into the person capable of achieving the vision. Patience is not passive. It is persistent. It is the quiet determination to keep moving forward day by day, step by step, even when progress seems invisible. I learned the power of accountability in supporting my vision. Commitment is strengthened when you are answerable to yourself and others. I set benchmarks, tracked progress, and evaluated results regularly. I sought mentors, allies, and peers who could hold me to high standards. Accountability ensured that my commitment was not merely theoretical. It became measurable, actionable, and enforceable. Vision without accountability is like a seed without water. It will never flourish. Committing to my vision required adaptability. The path is rarely straight. Obstacles emerge. Opportunities shift. Circumstances change. I had to remain flexible in my approach while staying steadfast in my ultimate goal. Vision is not rigidity. It is clarity of destination combined with adaptability and method. I learned to pivot without losing sight, to adjust without abandoning, and to innovate without compromising. Commitment is not blind stubbornness. It is deliberate persistence. I also had to embrace responsibility as part of my commitment. The vision was mine alone. If it didn't materialize, I could not blame circumstances, other people, or misfortune. I owned it completely. I took action daily. I made sacrifices. I endured setbacks. And I learned that the level of my commitment directly corresponded to the outcomes I achieved. Responsibility is the backbone of vision. Without it, dreams remain fantasies. Commitment to vision required me to strengthen my mindset. Challenges, failures, and criticism tested my resolve constantly. I had to develop mental toughness, the ability to stay focused under pressure, and the courage to continue despite adversity. I trained my mind to remain aligned with my purpose, to reject distractions, and to maintain unwavering belief in my potential. Mindset is the fuel that powers vision when circumstances threaten to extinguish it. I discovered that vision is contagious. Committing to it inspired others. When people see you unwavering in your pursuit, disciplined in your habits, and relentless in your action, they are drawn to your energy. Commitment builds influence not by words, but by demonstration. By committing to my vision, I became a magnet for support, collaboration, and opportunity. People wanted to be part of something purposeful, and clarity of purpose attracts alignment. I learned to embrace failure as part of the process. Commitment does not mean perfection. It means persistence. I failed repeatedly, but each failure provided insight. Each setback taught me strategy. Each mistake illuminated a better way forward. I stopped fearing failure and started seeing it as feedback. Committing to vision is about maintaining momentum in spite of setbacks, using failure as a compass rather than a stop sign. Committing to my vision required emotional regulation. Pursuing something meaningful brings pressure, stress, and moments of doubt. I learned to manage my emotions so that they support it, rather than sabotage my progress. Frustration and fear were acknowledged but not allowed to dictate action. Emotional discipline became a tool for clarity, allowing me to act decisively and intentionally even under strain. I also learned the importance of visualization. Daily, I pictured the life I was building, the outcomes I desired, and the person I needed to become to achieve them. Visualization aligned my subconscious with my conscious effort. It reinforced belief. It strengthened motivation. It made the vision feel real and attainable. Seeing the end goal in my mind, so I clarified the steps necessary to reach it in reality. Committed to my vision demanded time management mastery. I realized that every moment spent away from my purpose is energy lost. I prioritized actions that directly contributed to progress. I eliminated low-value activities, distractions, and tasks that diluted my focus. Time became my ally, and intentional use of it amplified my results. Commitment is sustained through consistent, purposeful allocation of attention and energy. Discovered that self-trust is essential in committing to vision. The world will doubt you. Others may question your path. Circumstances may tempt you to abandon your course, but commitment requires an unshakable belief in your own ability to see things through. Self-trust becomes a compass when guidance is scarce, a source of strength when criticism is loud, and a foundation of resilience when adversity strikes. Committing to my vision also requires celebrating progress along the way. While the ultimate goal remained my focus, acknowledging milestones reinforced persistence. Each small victory, each completed task, each lesson learned strengthened my resolve. Commitment is reinforced by recognizing growth, not just longing for the end. Small wins compound into momentum, and momentum fuels sustained effort. I realized that energy management is crucial in sustaining commitment. Vision requires endurance, and endurance requires vitality. I learned to nourish my body, mind, and spirit, ensuring I had the stamina to maintain daily action. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, and reflection became part of my strategy. Commitment is holistic. It is not just mental. It requires total alignment of effort and well-being. Commitment meant to vision demanded consistency even when enthusiasm waned. The days that felt easy were less defining than the days that felt hard. Showing up when energy was low, motivation was absent, or circumstances were challenging solidified habit, reinforced character, and demonstrated integrity. True commitment is proven in how you act when conditions are not ideal. I discovered that vision requires courage to defend. Others may doubt, criticize, or even ridicule. Pursuing something meaningful often involves stepping away from comfort, familiarity, and consensus. I had to embrace boldness, defend my choices, and remain steadfast in the face of opposition. Commitment is courage applied consistently, not occasionally. Finally, committing to my vision transformed my identity. I stopped seeing myself as someone who reacts to life and started seeing myself as a creator of it. I aligned my habits, thoughts, and actions with my desired outcomes. I became a person defined by purpose, discipline, and intention. Commitment reshaped my character, my relationships, and my influence. By committing fully, I became unstoppable in pursuit of my dreams. Committing to my vision is not a one-time event. It is a daily choice. Every decision, every action, every moment presents an opportunity to reinforce or weaken that commitment. And by choosing daily, consistently, and intentionally, I turn clarity into action, action into momentum, and momentum into fulfillment. This commitment is the bridge between dreams and reality. And walking it every day transforms not only what I achieve, but who I become. I choose myself not because I am selfish, but because I finally understand that I cannot pour from an empty cup. For years, I tried to be everything to everyone. I tried to carry expectations that were never mine, live up to standards I never set, and chase approval that never truly fulfilled me. And the more I gave away without choosing myself, the more I lost pieces of who I was meant to be. Today, this ends. Today, I make a decision that changes everything. I choose myself. Choosing myself does not mean I stop loving others. It means I stop abandoning myself. It means I stop shrinking so others can feel comfortable. It means I stop apologizing for my ambition, my growth, and my desire to become more. I realize that every time I ignored my needs, my calling and my inner voice, I pay for it with regret. And regret is far more expensive than discipline, courage, or sacrifice. I choose myself because no one else can live my life for me. No one else will wake up with my dreams. No one else will carry my consequences. No one else will answer for the time I wasted or the potential I buried. At the end of this journey, it will not matter how many people I pleased if I disappointed myself. It will not matter how many opinions I followed if I never honored my purpose. This is my life, and I take responsibility for it fully. I choose myself even when it's uncomfortable, even when it requires hard conversations, even when it means letting go of people, habits, and environments that no longer align with who I am becoming. Growth demands separation. Transformation requires distance from what keeps you small. And I understand now that every level requires a new version of me, a stronger mindset and a deeper commitment. I choose myself on the days I'm tired, on the days doubt creeps in, and on the days results are invisible, on the days nobody claps, nobody notices, and nobody believes. Because choosing myself is not about external validation. It is about internal alignment. It's about waking up every day knowing I'm living in truth, not fear. I choose myself by showing up consistently, even when motivation disappears. I choose myself by doing the work when it is boring, repetitive, and demanding. I choose myself by honoring my commitments, not because it feels good, but because it builds character. Discipline becomes an act of self-respect. Consistency becomes proof that I trust myself. I choose myself by refusing to let my past define my future. Mistakes do not disqualify me. Failures do not label me. Delays do not deny me. Everything I've been through has prepared me, shaped me, and strengthened me. My story is not over just because a chapter was painful. I refuse to live stuck in what was when I'm capable of building what can be. I choose myself by protecting my vision. I stop explaining my dreams to people who cannot see them. I stop shrinking my goals to make them palatable. I stop allowing doubt, mine or anyone else's, to dictate my direction. My vision is mine, and my belief in it does not require permission. I choose myself by managing my time like my future depends on it, because it does. I stop giving my best hours to distractions and my leftovers to my purpose. I understand every minute invested wisely compounds into progress. Time wasted never returns. And I respect myself too much to keep leaking my potential into don't matter. I choose myself by controlling my mindset. I refuse to let negative thoughts run my life unchecked. I challenge fear. I confront excuses. I silence the voice that tells me I'm not enough and replace it with action. Confidence is not something I wait for. It is something I build through execution. I choose myself by becoming accountable. I stop blaming circumstances, people, or timing. I own my choices. I own my effort. I own my growth. Accountability gives me power because it puts my future back in my hands where it belongs. I choose myself by learning, adapting, and evolving. I accept that growth is a lifelong process. I am not finished. I'm not late. I'm in progress. Every lesson sharpens me. Every setback strengthens me. Every challenge prepares me for what I ask for. I choose myself by prioritizing my health mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Success means nothing if I am broken along the way. I build habits that sustain me, not just push me. Rest is not weakness. Balance is not laziness. Taking care of myself is part of honoring my purpose. I choose myself by refusing to quit. Quitting is permanent. Struggle is temporary. Pain passes. Discipline pays. I remind myself that the days I want to give up are the days that matter most. Anyone can stay committed when it's easy. Winners are built in resistance. Winners up even when I fall. Because falling does not make me a failure. Staying down does. I rise again. I recommit. I adjust and move forward. Progress is not about perfection. It is about persistence. I choose myself by trusting the process. I may not see the full picture yet, but I trust the work I'm putting in today is building tomorrow. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Silence does not mean nothing is happening. I remain faithful to effort even when results are delayed. I choose myself by understanding that comfort is the enemy of greatness. Growth lives where fear exists. Expansion requires risk, and staying safe costs far more than trying and failing. I would rather risk discomfort than live with regret. I choose myself by becoming the example. Not just talking about change, but living it. Not just dreaming about growth, but embodying it. When I change, everything around me shifts. My consistency gives others permission to rise, but I do not wait for them to catch up. I choose myself by defining success on my terms, not by society's timelines, not by comparison, not by approval. My journey is mine, and my pace is valid. I refuse to rush what is meant to be built with intention. I choose myself every single day, not once, not sometime, but daily. Because this is just not a moment. It is a mindset. Every morning I wake up and decide again. Every choice reinforces it. Every action confirms it. And one day when I look back, I won't regret choosing myself. I would thank myself for the courage, for the discipline, for the faith, for the resilience. I will see a life built on intention, not accident, on purpose, not pressure. I choose myself because no one else will do it for me. I choose myself because my future deserves my effort. I choose myself because my dreams require my commitment. I choose myself because becoming who I was meant to be is not optional. It is my responsibility. And from this day forward, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how lonely it feels, no matter how long it takes, I will not turn back. I will not betray my potential. I will not abandon my purpose. I choose myself, and that choice changes everything.